This week's sentencing hearing of serial killer Bruce McArthur has shined a light on previous incidents when the murderer had close encounters with the law. In my hand is an agreed statement of facts we obtained through the courts. This details a violent 2001 assault when McArthur hit a man he knew over the head with a metal pipe. McArthur pled guilty to assault causing bodily harm and assault with a weapon. Just yesterday, the prosecution argued that this assault from nearly 18 years ago foreshadowed a killer in the making. Today, we went over the details in my hand with criminal defense lawyer Kim Schofield.
It wasn't a stranger attack. It seemed to be during a date of some sort.
Someone like Andrew Kinsman he knew for 15 years before he killed him.
Right.
The statement of facts from the October 2001 assault notes that McArthur had arrived at the victim's house with a metal pipe. He claimed that he carried it to protect himself. This week, we learned that a metal pipe wrapped in tape was one of McArthur's murder weapons of choice. He'd use it to tighten the rope around his victim's neck. Homicide detectives found a metal pipe under the seat of his van. We now know that more than a decade earlier, McArthur used a similar tool to deliver a serious blow.
The victim suffered a 5-inch laceration in the back of his head. This is no doubt, in your opinion, a violent attack.
Oh, certainly a violent attack, and one that could have been fatal if it was taken one step further. So maybe this was really at the infancy or the beginning of this kind of behavior.
We see in Section E that the attack was unprovoked. Mr. McArthur told the court that he had no idea why he attacked the complainant. The complainant also had no idea why he was attacked.
Yes.
Does that raise a flag for you?
I think it does, but you have to be also aware that during the agreed statement of fact, this would have been something negotiated between defense and Crown. So the defense would obviously want to take the position that he doesn't know why he did it.
Some of the conditions of McArthur's sentence was not to possess any drugs, including the street drug known as poppers, and he wasn't allowed to be in the Church and Wellesley village, where years later he lured multiple men into his deadly grasp.
Somebody turned their mind to the fact that keeping him out of that village could contribute to the prevention of further offenses.
More than a decade after this assault conviction, McArthur was arrested following another alleged assault, but he was released without charges. Ahead on City News, how a record suspension may have paved the way for McArthur to kill multiple men in Toronto. Earlier on City News, we shared with you details surrounding a Bruce McArthur conviction dating back to 2001 when he pled guilty to assault causing bodily harm and assault with a weapon. He had attacked a man he knew with a metal pipe, splitting his head open. More than 10 years later, in 2014, McArthur applied to have the assault conviction removed from his record. His application was accepted. His record was cleared. What authorities didn't know at the time, McArthur had already killed 2 men.
Is it normal for someone who has been found and convicted of a violent assault to have their record, cleared?
Suspended, cleared. Yes. And it's because we believe, if we believe in the criminal justice system and you believe in punishment, and you believe in deterrence, and you believe in redemption, people get better.
The problem is McArthur didn't get any better. By the time he applied to have his record cleared, he was already a killer.
It's a series of manipulations by somebody who was determined, for whatever reason, to commit these offenses.
This week at McArthur's sentencing hearing, we heard how in 2016 the killer showed up at the workplace of a man he had known for years. McArthur asked the victim to meet in his van in a parking lot later that evening. The floor of the van had a plastic sheet on it, and on top of that was a fur coat lying open. McArthur told him to lie down. He grabbed the man's throat and started strangling him. The victim was able to get away and called 911. McArthur was arrested, though after giving a statement, was released without charge. This week, the prosecution confirmed that McArthur's record would have appeared clean if police took a look, because he was granted a record suspension 2 years earlier.
Most likely, depending on data entry, they would see that there is a criminal record suspension. So, or in the old days, it used to be a pardon. So they would see that entry. They would not have access to the records that underlie that entry. So what is it for? What is the occurrence report that it's for? What are the circumstances?
And if his record had not been cleared from a 2003 assault, could that have been different?
I think it would have been a factor that would have played into the officer exercising his discretion. Because it is an unprovoked similar attack, he probably would have been charged as opposed to released.
And then taking it one step further, if that had happened, and when McArthur was questioned about missing men even after that, could that have helped police perhaps zero in on a killer and save someone's life?
It could have potentially focused the investigation, certainly.
Did the system fail 8 victims, or 6 victims, or even 1 victim?
I think that the Criminal Records Act, as it exists now, he still would have got a suspension. What has to happen, I think, it's not necessarily the act, but rather the exercise of the discretion in granting that suspension. So a more fulsome investigation need be done. That's what has to happen.
The officer who released McArthur in 2016 is currently facing insubordination and neglect of duty charges under the Police Act. There's also a review underway into missing persons investigations, and there's a request to expand the scope to include a closer look at how Bruce McArthur evaded the system, even working it for years.